The San Jose Sharks have finally traded Norris Winner defenseman Erik Karlsson to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to break down the trade to try to decide if it was actually a good trade and then figure out what's next for the Sharks going forward. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink and San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day, and we are doing it every day, Sunday morning right now, as we just got news of the Erik Karlsson trade. So if you want to be an everydayer, make sure you don't miss out on any news. Make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And of course, Erik Karlsson was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, a move that we've been basically waiting for since the end of the season, and it kind of felt like it was going to be the Penguins for a good chunk of the year, or a good chunk of the offseason, as especially after Kyle Dubas, who's been very much infatuated with trying to acquire Erik Karlsson, even going back to his days with Toronto. And, we finally get a deal done today. So let's first start off by just breaking down what the actual trade was before we kind of look at if it was a good trade, if it was a bad trade, and kind of what's next for all the parties involved for it. With so three-team trade between the Sharks, the Penguins, and the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll start with the Penguins, who receive one Erik Karlsson from San Jose. They also received Dylan Hamonic, Sharks pick from, was that 2019, 28, whatever. It was a contract to make contracts move. They also see Rem Pitlick from the Montreal Canadiens, and then they get the Sharks 2026 third-round draft pick. The Canadiens receive a 2025 second-round pick from the Penguins. They get defenseman Jeff Petrie, who was considered to be part of the Sharks trade, but didn't want to come out to the West Coast. They also get goalie Casey DeSmith, and then Nathan Legary, forward, all those from Pittsburgh. So, and then the Sharks receive the 2024 first-round pick from the Penguins as a top 10 pick protected. So if the Penguins pick in the top 10, this pick will revert to a 2025 first round pick for the Sharks. But I don't think the Penguins are going to be a top 10, one of the 10 worst teams this season. So Sharks also get Mikael Granlund, forward, defenseman Jan Rutta, and then forever Shark Mike Hoffman comes home from the Canadiens. So a lot of stuff going on there. And then plus the retention. The Sharks only retained $1.5 million of Erik Karlsson contracts over the next 4 seasons. So that 1.5 will be sitting on the books for the Sharks through the 2026-2027 season. Yep. And then, which coincides with the Martin Jones buyout. And then the Penguins retain like a little over $1.5 million of Jeff Petrie's deal for the next 2 seasons as he goes to Montreal. Okay, that's a lot of stuff happening there. So the big thing out of it is the Sharks clear $10 million of Erik Karlsson's contract, and the stuff they got back is not really anything to write home about yet. They got back a bunch. We'll look at the players here in a second, but the players they got back are pieces that you can do other stuff with going forward. So, but they got another first-round pick, and then you couple that with a potential first-round pick with the Devils. Go Devils! As if the Devils make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, the Sharks could be looking at 3 first-round picks going into this next draft. If not, you're going to have at least 2 first-round picks, assuming that the Penguins are now one of the 10 worst teams in the NHL. You're going to have 2 first-round picks and then 2 second-round picks at bare minimum, but you have a potential of getting 3 first-round picks. So let's look at the players the Sharks got back, and you're going to – this feels a little cap dumpish coming back. We'll get into whether this is a good trade or not, but let's just focus on what they got back here. And that would be – so we'll start with Mikael Granlund, who last year was traded from the from the Preds to the Penguins at the trade deadline. He had a solid season with Nashville before his trade. He had 36 points in 58 games for Nashville, and then he had 5 points in 21 games for the Penguins last year in their big trade deadline acquisition. Before that, he had 64 points for the Preds the year before. He's had 27, he's been kind of around a 30-point player, mid-20s to 30-point player going forward. And then he kind of popped off. I was looking at the wrong number. He's had almost 70 points with his days back in the Minnesota Wild. And then he kind of struggled with Nashville until he popped off with a 54-point season. And then last year ended with 41. But again, after he got traded to Pittsburgh, was basically a ghost. So this could be a bit of a reclamation project as Mike Grier continues to add reclamation projects. Granlund is 31. He just turned 31 in February, and he has 2 years left on his deal at $5 million. So he can also play center and right wing. So we'll see kind of where he slots in there. I think you might be looking at your new third line center, with maybe potentially Nico Sturm bumping down the fourth line. We'll get into that. But so 2 years left. So he's got $5 million for this year and next year on his deal. Going forward, he was potential buyout candidate for the Penguins. That's basically we were waiting on this morning to see if he would be put on waivers to be bought out. So next would be one forever Shark, Mike Hoffman, who played last season with the Montreal Canadiens. 67 games last year. He had 34 points as well, 14 goals, 20 assists. He has been a former 30 goal scorer back in the 18-19 season with the Florida Panthers. That was, if you remember, that was the year where the Sharks laundered Mike Hoffman from the Sens, traded him to the Panthers that morning, within the same morning. And then he went out to have a really good season. It's kind of bounced around the past couple of years. He played 2 seasons with Florida, season with the Blues, and then last 2 seasons with the Canadiens. Definitely was some history between him and between the Hoffman family and the Karlsson family, which makes it even more interesting that they're tied together again. You can go look that up. It's not a great story. So if you want, you can go look up the Hoffman Karlsson saga if you would like. And then the last piece, maybe the best piece they got back, not counting the draft pick, is defenseman Jan Rutta, excuse me. He is 33. He will be just turned 33 the other day. Right-handed defenseman, 6'3", 204 pounds. Has played the last season with the Penguins, where it didn't do much offensively. He only had 9 points in 56 games. But he's also played on the Cup-winning Lightning. He's also played for Chicago. Was kind of a staple for the Lightning on their defense when they made all those cup runs. He's solid defensively, 67th percentile defenseman, probably more of a third pairing defenseman. You're not expecting much offensively from him, but is solid defensively and can play, does a good job on the penalty kill. He played 2 minutes of power play. So last season, so we will see. I don't expect him to be running the power play for the Sharks this year, but so before we dig into if this was actually a good trade or not and kind of figure out what's next and who maybe this affects the most, do need to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our good friends over at Athletic Greens. And we know how hard it can be to have proper nutrition. You're busy, right? You're stuck at your desk all day. You're trying to eat whatever you can just to get through the day. What if you could just start your day off on the right foot with the ultimate daily nutritional insurance? With a single scoop of AG1 in a glass of water, you can do that and just absorb 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens. Help start your day right. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and with a complicated supplement routine that just wasn't not sustainable. It cost him $100 a day just to make sure he could be healthy. So he created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create the optimal nutrition routine on his own. He did this all for around $3 a day. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of their immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Was it a good trade? That's the tough part. Is you get a first round pick. Great. You don't have to retain. You retain $1.5 million of Erik Karlsson's contract. So you're clearing $10 million in contracts going forward. Yes, I know some that it's eaten up by Granlund and Hoffman, et cetera, et cetera. But you're getting out of the Erik Karlsson contract basically 2 years early, right? Because Granlund, $5 million for the next 2 seasons. Mike Hoffman's on the last year of his deal at $4.5 million. And then Jan Rutta, he's at $2.75 million over the next 2 seasons, right? Like all these, that's a great thing. You're getting out of these, basically getting out of these the Erik Karlsson money early. And you get a first round pick and you only have to retain $1.5 million. That part is like, that aspect of it, of getting out of Karlsson's money. And again, Erik, we don't know with Erik Karlsson, right? We've seen the highs and the lows with him. Do I expect another 100-point season out of Erik Karlsson? No. Do I expect maybe next year a point per game player? I think that's a fair kind of expectations for Erik Karlsson, is to be, around a point per game player, which the Sharks did not get back or didn't get anybody who's, anywhere close to being that, or that you can project to being one of those type of players. Did I expect that to come back from? No, but you want to at least have point to something, right? And you're kind of looking at this going, yes, you get a first round pick, but no prospect, nothing that can help you in the long run other than the first round pick. Now, could this be one of those trade tree things where you look back and you go, okay, yeah, Mike Hoffman turned into this, Mikael Granlund turned into this, Jan Rutta turned into this. It could be one of those things where you're looking back in 5 years and kind of look at the trade tree. But right now, it would have been nice to at least get a prospect back from the Sharks. So, for the Penguins, I think you have to feel, if you're a Penguins fan, you have to feel you did really well. You protected all your major, what little prospects or assets you had. You dumped some cap and you got the best player back in the deal. Granted, you gave up some picks, but the Penguins are in the business to try to win a cup right now. They want to win one more cup before Sidney Crosby and the gang retire. And this is what you have to do, right? You have to give up future assets, and you'll let future Penguins decide that. Again, if you win a cup, you hang it from the banners. That doesn't matter. And for the Canadiens, this is a kind of a sneaky. I like what the Canadiens did here. They got Casey DeSmith, who definitely took a step back last year, but you got some. He's played well for the Penguins in the past couple seasons as they still try to kind of figure out what to do, with their goalie situation right now. So, they're kind of taking another swing at it. I mean, yes, I know Casey DeSmith is 31, but he could be, at least hold down the fort for you for a little bit right now. So I'm, Yeah. Again, we shall see. This trade is going to hinge on what Mike Grier now does, which we'll get into kind of like what's going forward here in a second. But what can you do with Granlund, Hoffman, and Rutta? These are now assets that you can potentially turn into something else. And Hoffman, I think you try to pump up that value as best you possibly can this season. Play him in the top 6. Try to pump up that value, and then at the trade deadline, you flip him for whatever the best possible asset you could get. So preferably picks and players, but you pump and dump Hoffman as best you can this year. That is your goal. And we'll see with Rutta and Granlund. I know both those guys still have 2 years left on their deals, but a guy like Granlund, I think, is well respected around the league. And if a team wants to try to trade for him, especially a very manageable cap hit at $2.75 million going forward for this season and next year, and with the salary cap going up, he is someone that you could add, a contender could add for the next season or two if they think they're going to continue to contend and they want to really kind of help add to their bottom pairing defense. I don't expect, we'll see with Rutta if he gets traded this year or next year, but I do not expect him to see the end of his contract with the Sharks, because I think he's a valuable asset for another contending team. And again, what can you turn these guys into going forward? These are just, now you've added some pieces to turn forward. Granlund is going to be interesting because, again, the Penguins were this close to buying him out this offseason. Was turned into an absolute ghost. And if he can solidify your third line, and then you can, see what happens. I expect Granlund to be here all this season, especially with that $5 million cap hit. And the Sharks, again, now that they've retained Karlsson and Burns, they only have one more retention slot for the next few years. And I don't know if you want to kind of eat that retention slot for the next 2 seasons on Granlund if you are to retain. So again, Burns' retention is this year, next year, and then Karlsson's is this year, is the next 4 seasons. So you only have 3 retention slots. So I don't know if they want to retain Granlund, if they would need to trade him to retain him. So I expect Granlund to be here for the entire season. And then you go into next offseason, and maybe if his value is much better, cap hit goes up a little bit, maybe you might be able to trade him in the offseason. If not, you just ride with him going forward. So, but again, the first round pick is great. And I give Mike Grier the benefit of the doubt with the picks. I think he's going to make that into a good player. And if you walk into next draft with 3 first-round picks, granted, you're going to have 1 very, very high pick and 2 probably end of the draft picks. The hope is, if you really want to thread the needle, the Sharks are the worst team in the NHL. The Penguins just missed the playoffs, and then the Devils go to the Eastern Conference Final. That gives you a pick in the beginning, a pick in the middle, and the pick at the end of the draft, the first round of the draft. That's how you're hoping to thread the needle. But I think, though, I'm going to give Mike Grier the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be able to find a good player with that Penguins pick, but not getting back a younger player that you can point to and be like, okay, here you go. But that's my big kind of miss with this trade, is not getting a prospect back. So, but again, maybe we knew Grier wanted to really be low on the retain. He kept it at $1.5 million, making Erik Karlsson basically a $10 million player for the Penguins for the next 4 seasons. I think you have to be happy with that. You have to be happy with the first round pick. And again, we'll see what Mike Grier can turn these other guys into going forward. So before we look at what's next and kind of where these guys slot in and what's next to do for the Sharks, do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, probably a part of the Locked On Network, where we cover your team every day. This week, we're still at 3 episodes a week, but we're going to be talking about which player is going to earn that next big contract at some point. So that'll probably be on Wednesday, and then Tuesday night, Wednesday, and then the Locked On Canucks guys are going to be stopping by, where we're going to give the state of the franchise with the Canucks and kind of look at what's going on in Vancouver. So that'll how we end the week here at Locked On Sharks. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can subscribe on YouTube as well. All right, so what's next now? I think for Mike Grier, it's how do you spend this money that's going to be freeing up? And I think this move, puts a kind of timeline for the Sharks of when we can expect them to start being a bit more competitive, or at least. So if you look at their cap friendly page, so next year, this upcoming season, right, they still have $3 million in caps, $4 million in cap right now, with 23 guys on the roster. That includes like Giovanni Smith, Eklund, all 8 defensemen on the team. They're still going to have to try to figure out somebody who can run the power play. So maybe we now enter Matt Dumba watch, which again, I don't know if Matt Dumba's the guy to run the power play, but that's a conversation for another day. But then going into the 24-25 season, they'll have 14 contracts with $36 million in cap space. You're going to have guys coming off the books like Kevin Labanc, Mike Hoffman, Anthony Duclair, Barrett Banoff, Lynn Blom, Zadina will be an RFA. Radim Shimmick will come off the books. Jacob McDonald's coming off the books. Capo Kakinen's coming off the books. And Luke Cunningham will be an RFA. So you're going to have all those guys, you might re-sign some of those guys. Maybe you want to re-sign a Barrett Banoff if Duclair has a great season, whatever, Philip Zadina, et cetera, et cetera. But then you have $36 million in cap space. But then the season after, that 25-26 season, you're going to have a ton of cap space, $60 million in cap space going forward. And that's also with their Brett Burns contract coming off the books. You're going to have they're going to have 7 players on the roster, but then you're going to have guys like Will Smith, William Eklund, guys like Bordelot, Mukamadulin, like all these guys are going to be coming into their own. And that's when I think the Sharks can become more aggressive in free agency and adding players who can help them win now. So I think that 25-26 season is when you can kind of circle to be like, okay, this is when the Sharks should start to be competitive again. Because I think they're going to have, they're going to have plenty of space for it. And 2, that's when you're going to start to see these younger guys really come into their own. So I think that's kind of the timeline now, is that 25-26 season. So, but I think though you're going to, for this season, right, is trying to continue to gather assets, right? And Mike Grier did that. He gathered some assets, guys that he can potentially trade for some more future stuff, and whether that's picks or prospects, we shall see. But I think that's going to be what's going forward. I think some just kind of winners and losers, I think for Sharks players, is this hurts the Thomas Bordelot making the team out of camp chance, especially with Granlund, who can play center or wing. Whoever, if it's Sturm or Granlund playing 3-4 or 4-3, whoever is playing the third line or fourth line center. But I think this really hurts the Bordelot coming out of camp. And then among the defensemen, right, this hurts Leon Gavanke, who had a chance, I think, especially with Erik Karlsson. With Erik Karlsson being traded, Gavanke may be making the team out of camp. I think Gavanke will still play at some point this season. And then you got to look at some of the other defensemen, right? Knizhov, Shimmick, McDonald, Thrun. That's just more competition for these guys to now have to going forward of having to play that's more competition for very few spots. So now there's basically 2 spots up or there's still 1 spot up for grabs, right? You assume the locks right now among the blue line, Vlasic, Ferraro, Rutta, Benning, Burrows, right? Those are your locks to play. And I think there's going to be a lot of guys fighting for that last spot here, especially with a piece coming back, a defensive piece coming back from in the trade. So, yeah, I think don't run out and get your Mike Hoffman jersey yet this year. I think a lot of these guys are going to be kind of try to reestablish their value and then get shipped off at the trade deadline this year. So it's going to be interesting. And I think Hoffman, Granlund, and Rutta, none of them have no trade clause or anything like that. Basically, now the only players on the team with any sort of movement clause, so you have Hurdle with a full no move clause, Couture, who has a 3-team trade list, and Barabanov, who has a 10-team no trade list, and then Vlasic, whose no move clause is now a modified 3-team no trade list. So I'm starting to kind of see those clean up here a little bit. So yeah, I mean, we'll see with the trade. I think it's tough to grade it right now. I think it's going to be one of those, what does Grier now do with this other stuff going forward? So, but that's going to be it for me today. Like I said, we'll be back. So this is the Monday episode coming out early on Sunday. We'll be back on Tuesday night, Wednesday, to talk about kind of who's going to be the next guy to earn that nice big contract, kind of earn the first big contract from Mike Grier. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at MyFryHole. Until next time, bye, friends.